Hey, everybody. Welcome to the PuriFi Pros podcast. I am here with Michael Hunter. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Jerry.
I feel like I haven't seen you
Hello,
in forever.
everyone. Yeah, been a day, been a minute.
And I think that's probably what people's HVAC systems probably say sometimes is, I feel like I haven't seen you or anybody in forever. And that kind of leads us into what we wanted to talk about today, which is maintenance, but specifically fall and winter maintenance.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there's anything that gets neglected, it's those things that aren't seen, out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And we only know and care about our HVAC system to the degree it's working or not working. So if it's working, we don't think about it. If it's not working, boy, do we think about it when we need it.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, here in the Valley, we're in Arizona, right? And my AC went out in the dead of summer, and it's 115 degrees, and trust me, we felt it. You know, when you see your thermostat going 80, 85, 90 inside of the house, you're like, oh my gosh, I need this fixed immediately. But sometimes you can avoid those breakdowns if you take care of things in advance.
For sure. Yeah. I was like it too. You're going to go on a road trip with your family, and you plan, you do all this stuff, and then in the back of your mind, you have this thought, man, I hope the tires are good. Did I change the oil? Is the antifreeze good? You know, the coolant good in it? And so those thoughts, all of us have them. Whether we do something about them is another thing.
Right.
But we got to think the same thing about our heating and air conditioning system. Reason being is our heating and air conditioning systems run more than our vehicles do. Like, not even a close second.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, your car runs when you need to go take the kids to school, go to the grocery store, go to work, back and forth. But when you sleep, your heating and air conditioning system's running. When you go to work and the kids go to school, your heating and air conditioning system is still running.
Yeah.
Even if it's not as hard as, but it's still going. So those components need to be checked and maintained. I always say twice a year, depending on what area and what type of system you have. Twice a year is great. Once a year is better than none.
Right. Better than nothing, but twice a year is better. And that's the subject of today is probably that second maintenance. You want to do one before summer, given example, my situation, you want to try to avoid those breakdowns, but then also in the winter, or the fall and the winter. But the thing is, there's also some things that change as you move into fall and winter. There's a seasonality to not just what you need heat, not cooling, but also the air changes, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. The air, when we're heating it up, people talk about, it's as dry as the Sahara Desert. It can actually become drier in your home than the Sahara Desert. You're heating that air and you're sucking the moisture out of it. We're in a desert climate here.
Right.
You're thinking, well, how is that even possible? That's drier than it is. When we go through monsoon season, it's like, whoa, this is horrible. There's a lot of moisture in the air. During the winter, when you wake up and your throat's dry, your nose is plugged up, and your throat's scratchy. Matter of fact, you have a gravelly voice waking up. Sounds like everybody's a smoker when they wake up when it's dry air, right? It's just really, really brutal. We have to pay attention to those things. And there's some things that particles actually play a huge role in that, and people don't think about that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we talk a lot about particles, pathogens, aerosols, but then there's also the humidity. There's other things like ozone and carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide that we should be concerned about. And, there's maintaining the HVAC system. But another thing that I think you mentioned is also maintaining, it's a good time to remember to maintain the smoke alarms and the other monitors that you have in your house.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the years, we've just come up with a motto that, by Halloween is a great time to make sure you've checked all your smoke detectors. It's an annual thing, and your CO detectors, the batteries in them. Some of them come with long life batteries. Some of them are hardwired, so that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
But just know what type of system you have. Make sure those batteries are fresh. Keep everyone safe. A lot of people think, maybe I don't have a gas furnace in my home. Maybe I don't have a gas water heater. It's all electric. So what does that matter? This is a side note away from air quality and everything else. This is a safety issue. I always tell people, listen, what happens during the winter is people don't like to sit in a cold car. They like to turn it on, let it warm up, and then walk back in the house. Well, what's happening is the air is infiltrating from the outside into the inside, and all that exhaust finds its way in. And we've found that more instances happen because of that than any appliance in the home ever does. And so, yeah, we're trying to keep you safe on the appliance side, but just standard practices that people do, just habits.
Yeah.
We're trying to protect from that as well.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what we always talk about, which is measuring things. It's not enough to get a wink and a promise that everything's going to be okay, or hope that everything's going to be okay. And I've only had carbon monoxide monitors go off one time in my life, inside of my house. But that could have been the last time. That was around to even hear one. Same thing applies to my family. It was a few years ago. We moved into a new home, and they went off at 2 a.m. All of a sudden, it's blaring. We're all running out of our rooms, and we figured out it's carbon monoxide. We opened the windows. We called the fire department, and they found a pinhole leak in some of our natural gas pipes, and I think that one might have been actually connected to the furnace. As I think back a few years ago, what if it wasn't on?
Yeah.
What could have happened? Which, is always a good reminder to me. Take the precautions in advance. It's the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely. And that totally applies to checking your maintenance for your heating and air conditioning system. You got safety on one side, and then you'll have cost on the other side. What's the cost of not doing it? People don't weigh the cost until they know the cost sometimes. And they're like, oh, I wish I had. And so this is the not having to have that discussion I wish you had. So the why behind your maintenance, obviously, number one, safety of you and your family. Number two is because the time that you need your heating system and your air conditioning system the most, like you found out, that's the time that they usually break. Yeah. So if they're going to break, they're going to break under pressure. That's the key. And it's like a tire when it blows out. When that thing's running, the friction happens. That's when it's going to go apart. And hopefully it's not out in the middle of nowhere. Right. When you need it. Yeah. So, go ahead.
So what are some of the things, let's get to some of the things that people maybe should be looking for as they get to the fall. Okay, so that's a trigger. The leaves are changing. Yeah. Whatever it is that makes you think, oh, I need to do something about my home equipment, some of my monitors inside of my home. What should they be looking for in that fall maintenance? And we always recommend having a professional, come out, someone that we trust. We have people that we can recommend, obviously, with the PuriFi Pros group. But what should they be looking for?
There's just some simple things. On the contracting side, when you're looking to have fall maintenance, you definitely want them to change their filter, and see what's going on there. The other side is you have the blower system, or the system that pushes the air through the home running all the time.
Blower motor.
The blower motor, yeah, okay. That's the blower wheel, the blower motor. That they should be checking the connections because you have electrical wires that are getting hot, and you just check the condition of the wiring. You want to check the blower wheel as well. A lot of times when you change a filter, you're like, oh my goodness, look how nasty that looks. Well, what happens is generally on filters is a lot of the stuff gets by the filter. And right behind that filter is that blower wheel, because that's the stuff that's moving the air. And you will find on that wheel, it looks like a squirrel cage is what it looks like. And those fins on there, they're generally metal. Sometimes they're plastic. They get coated with dirt, because what happens is there's oil from the motor and there's all sorts of things, and they get coated. And what will happen is it's almost like it's free spinning, and so you don't get the airflow going. So you're like, oh, my system doesn't push as much air. Right. It could be that motor, that wheel. The other thing that'll happen is it'll cause that motor to overheat, and that'll seize on you, just like a car motor will seize. And that's generally during the time you need it the most.
Yeah. Well, as I thought about, as you were talking about that too, so you've got this, why should I do this and what should I look for? One, I need to protect my equipment. Yeah. And as we talk about almost every time, we need to protect the people. Yeah. And so as you were describing that, and now I'm not getting more air, what's funny is we have a customer who found out that their blower motor was going bad because their air quality changed, because they weren't getting the purification from our device and from the air filter installed that they were used to getting. And he texted me, so he's had great air quality. He's in the green. His air quality index is low. And he texts me, he says, hey, I think there's something wrong with your system. That was his first reply. I said, I don't think that's the case, but the sensor never lies. So tell me, what does your sensor say about the air quality? And he said particle counts are really high upstairs, but they're still pretty good downstairs and also in the basement. And I said, well, what's going on with your HVAC system? Anything sound strange? Any temperature issues? Is it taking longer? Is it running longer? And he said, you know what? He started thinking about it. He says, it is. I heard a sound. It sounded a little weird because it was up in the attic. And then what happened was he was having to fight the heat harder and longer. Had an HVAC professional come out, check his system. His blower motor was dying.
Wow.
He had to get it replaced. So money, I don't know what the story was on the maintenance that should have occurred. Maybe he did maintain it, and it was 20 years old, and it ran its life. But it affected the air quality because the devices that were installed to purify, the filters that were installed to catch, they couldn't do their job because the air wasn't moving.
Absolutely. The number one issue in nearly all HVAC failures, the number one issue, people say, oh, was it the refrigerant? What was it? What was the component of, why something failed? The number one issue always has been airflow. Number one. Usually lack of airflow is what happens. And so another thing during the heating maintenance season that needs to be checked, if you have a furnace, really key, it's called a heat exchanger. And the way I explain it to people is like, if you've ever used a blow dryer before, you have a fan on the blow dryer that's blowing the air, and then you have heat coils. Yeah. Right? So if you have electric heat, your heat coils are very similar to that of a blow dryer, just much larger. On a gas furnace, it's a heat exchanger, and you've just got gas going through that heat exchanger, and it's heating up. Well, if you don't have the correct airflow, what'll happen is those panels, those cells, that heat exchanger actually heats up, and it's metal. So it expands and contracts. If it gets too hot because air's not flowing across it, it'll crack. If it cracks, that's where carbon monoxide comes from.
Oh, interesting.
And that is a safety issue. So every single winter, matter of fact, I say every spring is another great time to have it checked because now that thing's been running all winter. Yeah. You want to know that as soon as you can. Sure, you're not going to use it during the air conditioning season, but if it's cracked, you want to know that in the spring. Yeah. Because we've seen heat exchangers for systems take months to get in the recent
supply chain challenges.
They don't have So what do? Go without heat? Yeah. That's your option. Yeah. Or you get a whole brand new system, which is thousands of dollars.
That's true. It's a really good point. And the industry of contractors are so busy in the summertime. Yeah. Your costs are going to go up. Your lead times are going to go out. So fall and spring, great times to really be looking to maintain those systems.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah. And so as we think about, okay, so I need somebody to be checking my electrical connections. Let's take a look at that blower motor. Let's make sure I have airflow.
Right.
So checking the airflow, number one, that's key. And both the system and the filter and the setup of everything, all of those affect that airflow. What else are we looking for? I know you mentioned things like condensation being a factor.
Yeah, so we'll grab a bottle of water here. So if we were in a situation where it was, you have a cold bottle of water, right? And all of a sudden you put it in a hot space.
Yeah, I mean, I have one here.
Yeah,
mine is foggy.
You can see,
right? It's all coming off, and there's moisture on the outside.
So with that, what happens is the same thing happens in your air conditioning system. You've got hot air, you've got a cold surface, and so now it's condensing, and it has what we call a drain line or a condensate line. And here in the valley, and many other places across the country, those systems where that's condensing is above the living space.
Right, as it is for me.
Yeah.
That's how it is in my house.
And so what will happen, even if it's not in the living space, it can eventually get to the living space, and I'll explain that in a second. But what will happen is nature. Bugs like to find places to live, and so when there's not water draining, say during the winter,
oh right,
those things, bugs will find their way in. They'll get plugged, or just because debris and all the stuff that's coming off the coil ends up down that drain. Another good reason to have a clean filter and a clean coil, because all that gunk that's coming off the system is going into that drain. It solidifies. So next summer, what will happen is your air conditioner is trying to drain. It can't. Water will back up like it will in any other drain.
Oh, yeah.
May fill the pan that's underneath. There's a safety pan, safety switches. Those do fail. And if it fails, where's that water going? It's going in your drywall, and then it's going to go on all your nice furniture. Right. And that is a disaster.
Yeah. If you've ever been there before, I mean, it's horrible.
Oh.
When stuff starts coming in from your ceiling, it's a significant freak out moment.
Yeah. And it'll, people have them in basements as well. It'll back up, go in the basement, and it'll get on their carpet. It'll go everywhere. Yeah. So those condensate lines, so airflow, just what we call callback issues. Airflow, condensate lines, those are huge.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And what about anything cleaning wise? If somebody's coming out to look at your systems and perform a maintenance, is there some cleaning that should be done in the equipment? Is that part of it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. When they look at the cleaning, obviously you want all the connections, wire, everything else clean, free of dust, debris, and grease and all those things. But the blower wheel, absolutely clean. The coil, everybody should check the coil that's on the inside of their air conditioner. They call that the evaporative coil. That should be clean because that affects your energy cost and airflow. The outdoor air conditioner.
Right, those boxes that sit on the side of your house.
Yeah. That the coil on that should be clean. The fan on it should be clean. So anything that moving parts, they're moving. If they have, I liken it to this: if you ever looked at a ceiling fan before, and had to get up there and then clean it off,
that's nasty.
It is disgusting.
Yeah, it's gross.
What happens when you turn it on when you need it?
Yeah.
Where's all that dirty air go?
Right.
Nothing's different about your air conditioning system.
That's true.
That dirty air is
flinging around,
and it's really important because your filter is here and it's flowing it, so the filter doesn't get a chance to catch that stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's just flinging around the room, so you can breathe it in.
So
and enjoy it.
Here's your filter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Your face becomes the filter.
Yeah.
And your body. No, that's a really good point. And as we talk about the particle aspect of things, and you talked about the cleansing of the equipment, we have a customer who's a dentist and prominent member of the community, and has a nice home and has lived there for 20 years. What he found out over time was that every winter his conditions changed inside of his home on particle counts. So there are different ways to measure particles, and we've talked about PM 2.5. But if you could just imagine, the short story here is every winter, because the way his duct system was set up wasn't sealed right, can lights in his ceiling weren't sealed right, he was breathing in this invisible threat for 20 years. And it was like going from green, on your particle count measurements, like you see on your weather app, to dark maroon or purple. It's just hazardous. And it affected his health, over that period of time. And we'll save the full story for another day. But the short story is, if he didn't have a laser particle counter, like we have at PuriFi Labs, inside of his home, measuring what was actually happening, then he would have never known that he had that problem. Luckily, though, when the furnace kicked on in the fall, and he had a monitor in his house to measure the air quality, then he was able to see something's wrong. He had a professional come out, perform that maintenance and that inspection. They found the root cause of the issues, and his air quality significantly improved. Not just in the summer and the spring when he was using air conditioning, but all year round. Yeah,
that's there's a lot of terminology out there: negative pressure, sealing of ductworks, and things like that. Your HVAC professional should know these things, but really looking at the condition of that ductwork, because it's supposed to be sealed. The air should be blowing through those and going into the room.
Right.
But if they're not sealed, it can actually pull in the air from the attic and pull that in and suck it in through and supply it before it ever has a chance to filter.
Right.
And that's very likely the type of causes that same issue he had.
Yes.
Those happen very often.
Yeah, exactly. So covered a lot of good ground today. We talked about electrical safety. We talked about blower motors. We talked about air filters and specifically airflow, making sure that airflow is moving through the system. And also, though, measure the air quality inside of your home. And one of our customers who actually realized their blower motor was going out because their air quality changed, because they had enjoyed good air, and then all of a sudden something changed and they figured out the blower motor had gone wrong. So measuring the air quality all the time could actually be an early indicator of the fact that something's wrong, and then you'll ultimately find that piece of equipment. But performing that maintenance every year, save energy, save some comfort for yourself, protect your comfort, because when it's hot or when it's cold is when it's going to go out. And then also save yourself potentially some money as the owner of the home, but I'd also say as the renter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because who's paying the bill on the energy?
Right. Yeah, if maintenance isn't done, we all know rental costs have gone up, and everybody's costs have gone up. That energy bill is going to rise, and you should really, really make sure that maintenance, it's worth paying that small cost. Yeah. Because you'll double your energy bill possibly. The repair bill will even be higher.
Yeah. And you can at least advocate for it. Say, or ask the question.
Yeah.
How often are we performing maintenance on the HVAC systems in this home as the renter, and advocate for it to be taken care of? And if not, then seriously consider doing it yourself, because it could save you money and make sure you don't break down in the middle of winter or summer when you need it most.
Absolutely.
All right. And then PuriFi Labs, we're always here. Answer questions.
Yeah.
Give people feedback, whether they post it in comments or they send it to us on our website or they make a phone call. We have our network of PuriFi pros who can help support, and we'll answer questions and make sure everybody's good to go for fall and winter.
We're here to help.
All right. Okay, we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks.